Roger, go for deploy.
It always seemed to be a problem with the woman. The woman needed to be suppressed because, we were a temptress to man. So it was never about the man controlling himself. It was always about the women having to control themselves. And it's really only in the last few years that I have peeled back all those layers and come to find that 4.5-year-old Claire again.
Hey guys, welcome back to Adventure Fit Radio. Today, what we have for you is we have a fascinating chat with a woman named Claire Ashman. Basically, Claire lived a large portion of her life, I'm talking a couple of decades, in cults. The most famous of which was a doomsday cult in Victoria, which basically 180 doomsday preppers living on a big compound, being told, what to think, what to say, so on and so forth. And this is her story and everything that was involved in her crazy life. She was a lovely lady. It was actually hilarious. I walked in the door. I interviewed her in her home in Brisbane. I walked in the door and I looked at the kitchen table and I thought there was a big, huge feast lined up, a smorgasbord of food. And I thought to myself, oh man, Claire must be having a party later. She must be having people around or something like that. Anyway, I sat down and she brings the platter over with all this amazing food and she's like, takes the cover off and she's like, okay, here we go. You can dig in. I prepared this for us. And we feasted for like an hour before the show even started. Then after the show was finished, she made brownies. Oh man, it was a classic experience and she's a bloody awesome chick. So she's also got a lot of cool TED Talks, guys. So if you look up Claire Ashman, you'll see them there. So anyway, this show is brought to you by True Protein. Make sure you head to trueprotein.com.au. You can use the code AWF for all your supplement needs. You'll get 10% off everything. They have absolutely everything under the sun. And you guys will, you'll really benefit from getting on the good stuff, getting on the old Australian supplements, not the Mexicans. But this show is also brought to you by Adventure Fit Travel. Head to www.adventurefittravel.com and you can see what we have coming up in 2019. We have Everest Base Camp, we have Bali, we have Vietnam. We've got loads of cool stuff, guys. If you want 10% off the most epic experience of a lifetime, then you can head to www.adventurefittravel.com, use the code RADIO at checkout. Anyway, guys, here's the show. Alrighty, cool. Wow, we're rolling, so we may as well get into it.
Go for it.
So, for those listening and watching, Claire just prepared. We're sitting with Claire Ashman. She just prepared an absolute smorgasbord for me before I set the cameras rolling. I've never been treated so graciously. So thanks, Claire.
Oh, you're very welcome. And you're going to have the brownie later.
Yeah, it's brownies. Brownies for dessert on the way out. So awesome. So we're up in Brisbane here, and I'm sitting with Claire Ashman. Claire is author of Lessons from a Cult Survivor here. She's also a multiple 4-time TEDx speaker, yeah?
Yes, four times. Yes, 4.
Knocked one out of the park recently in Melbourne. She said it was the best one yet, so stay tuned for that one. So Claire, anyway, welcome to the show. Why don't you tell us about who you are and, what you do?
Who I am and what I do. Right. Well, what I do now is I'm a women's mentor and coach, and I'm also a public speaker. Mm-hmm. So with my business of being a women's mentor and coach, I help women be able to break through restrictions and boundaries. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's religion. It could be, in a restrictive relationship. It could be a job. But I have a different perspective of the world, and it's about finding who you are. And I help to not only break the boundaries, but peel back all those layers to find out who you are and who you are meant to be.
Okay, cool. So where did that all begin? When did you decide that it was women and helping them break through those barriers? Where did that all come from?
Okay, well, for me, I have a photo of myself because I remember when I was 4.5 and my mum changed to being completely religious. So I remember being little and happy, adventurous and cheeky and sassy and, like asking a lot of questions. Mm-hmm. And then, my mum became really religious, and then there was all these dampeners. Mm-hmm. So we weren't allowed to wear shorts and T-shirts anymore or pants, and then had to wear scarves on our head when we went to church. And it always seemed to be a problem with the woman. The woman needed to be suppressed because, we were a temptress to man. So it was never about the man controlling himself. It was always about the women having to control themselves. And it's really only in the last few years that I have peeled back all those layers and come to find that 4.5-year-old Claire again.
Really?
Yeah, because I was suppressed. Everything was suppressed, like my natural vivaciousness, my natural, everything about me was suppressed because, between my mother and then my ex-husband, I talked too much, I talked too loud, I laughed too loud, I crossed my legs, I talked too much. I seemed to be
a horrible feeling.
That's it. I was like too much. There was too much of me, so I had to bring me all that back, and that didn't make me happy inside. And then through, all of that religious indoctrination and manipulation over 30 years.
Yeah.
When you think about it, I was suppressed and manipulated and indoctrinated for that period of time. And normally you would think that the person has disappeared, like your inner self has disappeared.
Yeah, the damage is irrevocable. You would imagine that would be the case for the most part.
Yeah. But there was this voice inside that kept on saying, hey, I reached a point, with when we were living in the cult and then my ex-husband, I honestly just reached a point where it was just like, I've had enough. And I literally reached that point where, I didn't realise it until years later, but I was numb until I started thawing out. I didn't realise that. But I just reached a point where it was just like, I don't care anymore. I just don't care. I don't care what happens. I don't care that I don't pray enough. I don't care that I don't sacrifice enough. I was just existing and I didn't want to live like that anymore. And then that for me was the tipping point. And then but then looking from the outside in, you would have looked at me and said, this girl has no choices. She has no choices. I had no money. I had no bank account.
Yeah.
I had no friends outside of that compound. It was, I had one best friend in Melbourne, Mary, who is amazing, and we're still friends now. She's amazing. But I didn't confide much in her because we had been told that the phone lines, because we just had the normal phone, and we were told that the phone lines were tapped.
Right.
So I didn't reveal much to her, but it was just and so for me that was the tipping point, and then I started peeling back those layers, and it's just like the more times I pushed and broke through, the more I found myself.
Yeah. It must feel like a really huge relief and a huge weight off your shoulders. I must feel like to be able to feel comfortable in your own skin.
Oh, yeah, it does.
I'm reading the diary of Anne Frank at the moment, and it's just a diary of a 13-year-old girl in the Holocaust, and the diary is basically about her not feeling comfortable and her feeling like she's always doing something wrong, or her feeling that she's always the one that's underappreciated and the one that's unloved. And, so many people today probably deep down feel like that, and it must be bloody terrible. So I can imagine it must have been like, breaking the shackles when you started to. So about how I don't know how to pull this story together. So whether we go back to the start or whether, so
just ask away.
Yeah. So, all right. So we understand relatively where you are now and what you're doing. So let's take it back to the beginning, because obviously the book is, official title, Lessons from a Cult Survivor. That's right. Lessons from a Cult Survivor. It's not every day that somebody hears a story of, somebody who's survived a cult, who's been there and actually lived it. So why don't you tell us, what was the cult you're in? How did it all start? How did your family get involved?
Right.
What did that all look like?
Okay. So I'll condense it down because it is a bit confusing.
Yeah.
So
I'm already confused.
You're already confused. No wonder. So basically, my parents are Catholic, and when I was young, so it was just myself, my brother, and my twin siblings. And we were just Catholic, and we would go to the local Catholic church. We lived in Ballarat, and we would just go to the local Catholic church on Sundays and some holy days and say maybe grace before meals, and that was it. When I was 4.5, Mum met this priest who dressed in the old way before the changes of the church in 1962. You know, he wore the cassock with the big cincture and the massive rosary beads hanging from the side and everything like that.
He was legit. He was an OG.
yeah. That's
For lack of a better term.
yeah, that's right. So it was really, he was the real deal. Anyway, he started saying the Mass in Latin in my parents' lounge room, and there were more and more people coming. Like, I remember that as a kid. And then he started saying this Mass in Melbourne. And so then it grew bigger than Ben-Hur really quickly. And he said Mass in a few places around Melbourne. And then finally they bought this church in Hampton, and it's still there today. And they were saying Mass there. And so we used to travel from just outside of Ballarat down to Melbourne so it was a 4-hour round trip.
Well, every Sunday.
Every Sunday.
Wow.
And then you imagine.
You must have hated Sundays.
Oh, we did.
Sunday's the Sabbath. You guys are religious. You should know that.
Yeah, I know. But you imagine Easter time. We've got Good Friday, Holy Saturday, and Easter Sunday, all 3 days in a row. Oh, my God.
Yeah, right.
Terrible.
Airbnb, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. Then, so we were part of that from the time I was 4.5 until I was 20 that we were going to that, right? That particular priest actually formed an alliance / paved the way for a group called the Society of St. Pius X that are a breakaway sect in the Catholic Church. So they were part of the Catholic Church, but they're not now, and they haven't been for quite some time. And so they're the ones that actually say that Mass in Hampton now. Now, I met my ex-husband. He came to stay at my parents' house when I was about 15, and he was an ex-seminarian of that Society of St. Pius X.
Right.
And so now bear in mind, myself and my siblings were homeschooled. We didn't have any television, no outside media. We didn't have any outside friends, none of that. And so I thought, I formed an attachment to him, which I thought was love. But then you've got to remember, I had nothing to gauge it by at all.
Yeah.
So I got married at 18.5 to him, and he was 12 years older than me. So he was 30 already. I didn't know it was wrong. I didn't know it was weird because nobody ever explained it to me. And so from the time I was 20 to the time I was about 25, we attended the local parish, but we did our own thing, as in, I still wore a scarf over my head and we knelt down to receive communion and all that sort of thing, because my ex-husband had read that he believed in end-of-world theories, and he believed in these seers that apparently received messages from heaven who were saying, those of you who were the salt of the earth and knew the old way of church needed to be part of the parish so that we could teach, the pagans like you the real way to go.
The dirty pagans.
Yeah, that's right.
The dirty bloody pagans, always just living their life the end of the world way.
Yeah, that's right.
Like the world's always going to be here.
Yeah, that's
bloody
it.
hell.
So then he found a guy named William Cam, also known as the Little Pebble. And because my ex-husband's family came from Slovenia, he had this romanticised notion of living as a community. So like the villages in Europe, you have your little village and you have the church as the centre of it, and everybody helps each other and they celebrate the feast days, and they dress the same, look the same, believe the same, do the same. So he wanted, in his head, he was trying to find something like that here. And so he found this guy called William Cam, who had a few of these around Australia, and they're still running. And so he found him and then decided that we would move up to Nowra to be part of that compound. So that compound is still there. It is still surrounded by barbed wire fences and padlock gates, and that's how we lived. Right. And so we were there from February 97 to August 2006.
Right. Okay. So the catalyst for all this, the catalyst for the Doomsday Cult was your husband. Not the priest. The priest just had basically a large following, but it was your husband that kind of started the Doomsday Cult.
So they're two separate groups.
Yeah.
but they both affiliate with the Catholic Church. But the William Cam, my ex-husband wanted to move there. He didn't actually start the group, so he just wanted to be a part of it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, what do you think it is that makes people want to move to Nowra, for example, for lack of a better example,
like that, to join a group like that,
to go live on a compound, to join a group like that? What do you think? Does it take a very charismatic figurehead like your husband, or like the Little Pebble guy that you mentioned before, or do you think it's just, you know, people are longing out for something and that's just happens by chance, or like why do cults exist and why do they grow? Some cults that we see, like obviously there's a documentary running around on Netflix at the moment, Wild Wild Country. It's a great documentary. And that cult was growing like wildfire. And, you know, you'd say probably because it was, you know, charismatic leader. It seemed like a very happy cult and it seemed like there wasn't too much. Like what is it that why do cults exist? Why do people want to join something like that? Right.
Well, I mean... So I've just completed my first single unit subject, you know, on this, sociology and theology.
That is a tongue twister and a half.
It is,
You did well to get that out in 2 or 3, 2.5 goes.
Yeah. But look, I was very grateful that I was introduced to it, because if you had have asked me this question before, I would have stumbled a little bit. And I mean, I don't know everything. I'm just going to put that out there. But these groups they form because of some lack or something that is going on in the world. So there's a void in the world that then is filled by a group or these groups. Sense. So there's always, you know, a vacuum. Now, the people that join them a lot of them are what we call seekers. So they're looking for something else. Now, see, two perfect examples is, firstly, my mother. Like, she was a nun before she got married, and even I was only 16 when I found out that she'd been a nun before.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But the thing is,
Mum, you're a nun.
Yeah, that's it.
You didn't even tell us.
She didn't. You can read about it in my book because it's all there. But the thing was that even though we didn't know that until, like, I didn't know it until I was 16, like, Mum just always she loved prayer. She loved just kneeling there, eyes closed, hands joined. You know, she didn't like to be interrupted, and she loved to fast and have the candles going, all the rest of it. She loved all that, all the bells and smells of Catholicism.
Yeah, really bought into JC.
That's right. She did. She really brought – so once she was introduced to that older priest that loved all of that felt home to her. She felt displaced. She didn't feel comfortable in the way the church was changing. But there's also the fear of change. And I mean, when you think about it, the church was changing a lot, you know, sociologically, spiritually, you know, there was a lot going on in the church, in the world. You know, everything was advancing, and and for them that was safe. And now for my ex-husband, like I mentioned before, he loved this idea, this romantic notion of living in a little village. So for him, he was just looking for something to replace that. He wanted to feel that safety in that. And that's what you find most often, is that they are looking for something. And then when they do join, yes, there's generally a charismatic leader. And then in other, you know, a lot of the time you are love bombed, as they put it. You know, they make you feel wonderful and loved and wanted and needed and part of the family. And so then they think, oh, you know, I found my spot. And so that is for what it is for a lot of people. Yeah,
it makes perfect sense. I talk about this all the time on the podcast, and with anyone in my life that I can really. I heard of this concept. We were talking about CrossFit before the show. I heard of I think I might have read a blog about CrossFit. It was about 4 or 5 years ago, and it mentioned the concept of a third place, and a third place is somebody's community, effectively. Like, basically, you know, 90% of our waking life is probably taken up by work or home. You know, they're the two places, if you count them as like experiences. The experience of home, is it fun? Is it stressful? Is it straining? The experience of work, is it fun? Is it stressful? Is it straining? compared to like your third place, which people need. I'm huge on the idea of, and it's people like, you know, your CrossFit community, or it's people like your knitting club, or
yes,
you know,
exactly.
your mates that you go sail with, your chess club, whatever it is. It's the people that you can go and escape your, you know, your day to day from.
Yeah.
And people don't have that anymore, I feel like. And I feel like they're probably the people that, you know, because there is no community anymore.
Well, as a community, and then as we were also talking about connection. So that is, I think, those sort of groups, and that, again, that was also as part of the, you know, like part of the reading that we did in the course as well, is that, you know, it's looking for the connection, because they do feel displaced because they don't have that. Like, you know, we don't have the, you know, as I think it was Hillary Clinton that's mentioned it. I know she did mention it. I don't know whether she coined the phrase, but it takes a village to raise a child. And we don't have that anymore. You know, like most often we don't even know our neighbours.
Yeah.
And so it's not – so people do look for that, and I think you're right. That is part of it.
Well, I actually think, you know, I'm not going to set out and start a cult tomorrow. You know, don't worry.
It could be quite ludicrous.
Yeah.
I mean,
lucrative. Yeah,
That's
I'm sure it's lucrative. It's probably ludicrous as well, to be honest. If I got my hands on a cult and I get to set it up the way that I want to set it up, it's going to be ludicrous. But in defense of your ex-husband, like I actually, I was talking about this with Drew, my business partner, just the last couple of days. We were talking about Dunbar's number. So the number of people that, you know, we're supposed to, scientifically it's supposed to be that we're supposed to live in 150 people, communities, tribes,
right,
and so forth. That's that's before, and then after that, that's when our natural state has to change. We have to have, you know, leadership, and we have to have, and that's kind of like where we're at now. It's 1,000 times that, but we sit at a pretty happy place at 150 people, because you know everybody in your community. After 150 people, you don't really know. You don't really know everyone. You can't trust everyone, and there has to be all these laws and parameters and different hierarchies inside of a society. So I actually think there's a whole heap to that. I actually like the idea. There was actually a funny thing. I'm not trying to get you back into cults, by the way.
All right. Yeah. No.
But it was actually another woman that came into my co-work. I work from a co-working space in South Melbourne, down in Victoria, and she was talking about the concept of co-living areas. She was like, I can't believe Melbourne doesn't have any co-living areas.
Right.
So all these companies like WeWork and so forth, who are they have co-working offices. There's kind of like a push towards co-living where, you know, you'll have your own rooms and your own so on and so forth, and there'll just be a communal kitchen and a communal lounge area, a communal this and that. And without having to play by anybody else's rules, without having to be a cult and dress this way and you're not allowed to do this and you're not allowed to do that, I think the concept is quite strong. I think it's a pretty not a noble, it's a pretty positive idea to live, to have a nice little community that, I don't know. You seemed your thoughts are probably maybe different, but
I think I did read something in a magazine a couple of years ago about, it may have even been in Melbourne or country Victoria somewhere, where they'd set this up, where they were doing what you were saying, you know, having the different rooms, but you got a communal kitchen, communal living space. And I have to admit that when I hear it,
you're like looking at the prices.
I can feel a little bit of resistance there.
Yeah, I can see it now when I'm talking about it. I can feel your resistance to the idea.
Yeah, look,
understandably so.
I feel it, but see, again, this is where, and going slightly off on a tangent, because I do that, is that because I do this in my course as well. You know, you've mentioned that, and you could see and feel my resistance, and I willingly admit that.
Yeah.
Now the thing is sitting with it and asking myself, why do I feel that? Now, I feel that resistance because of my bad experience with the cult.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that it can't work. Look, I think that it's lovely when it can work well. Like, as long as we're not forced to eat together as a
do anything.
Yeah, or forced to, eat a certain way, believe a certain way, or we have to go and work in the garden to make ourselves self-sufficient. Yeah. And just as a side note, I'm not against anybody being self-sufficient. It's just if you add the end of the world bit into it.
I'm more fascinated by this end of the world part of the whole cult scenario. But no, I agree. I just like the idea of people living together. That's the only thing. I mean, we don't have to cook together communally. We don't have to follow any sort of, we definitely, in my ideal scenario, I wouldn't be following anybody's guidelines. It just surrounds people with more people, because I think that as a society, we're so sad at the moment. And I really think I don't think that's a weird summation by me or a crazy summation to say we're a bit sad as a society. I think there's, whether it's just reported more or not, but there's a huge rise and it's just going up and up, all our mental health issues that we have. And I think it's because, we're so connected on social media and so forth, and the world is smaller and smaller and smaller. One of my companies is an outsourcing agency, so putting people in Venezuela that need work with businesses and entrepreneurs all around the world. The world is just getting smaller.
It is,
but it's not getting more connected, it's getting less connected.
Yeah.
We sit in cars all day, every day, and then, drive to an office where we sit down and put our headphones in and work all day, and then we go back to a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment. Like, it's not really how it's supposed to be. I just think I go to my gym right now because I just want to talk to people. Like, I don't really care. I'm not in a heavy training stage or anything right now. I just like being around people. It's like gives me an hour in the afternoon to go and shoot the shit if I've had a bad day at work.
Yeah, well, see, I think that's the thing. I think that we need to have that connection. And I, for me personally, I even noticed earlier this year that I had a lot of resistance in advertising myself, because I'm part of some groups, women's groups on Facebook and whatever, and I could feel that resistance, like, today's market day. How am I going to word this? How am I going to put it out there? And the thing was, I figured out that I'm more of a people person. People are going to, like when I've sat, opposite to women and I've spoken, talked to them and helped them, ask them just even a few questions, and I can see their face light up and they go, oh my God, you're so right. I can do that. I have got the choice to do that. I've just helped them break through a block that they had in their head. And so I know that people, I connect with people really well. And see, that's the thing. My resistance is that I prefer to, I prefer to talk to people. My resistance is actually doing it online. Yeah. And that is me. And one thing that I am doing now more, and I'm going to continue to do more of, is actually go out and connect with people. Yeah. Because I like doing that. And I have an awesome circle of friends as well, because when I moved up here 5 years ago from Nowra, I made sure that I would be very strict in who I would have around me. Yep. They had to be, I fan their flames, they fan mine. And, we support, encourage and help each other with our businesses and in our everyday lives and stuff like that. And I think that is of huge value for us mentally and physically and emotionally.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's like this podcast. We obviously were potentially going to do it on Skype, and then we, rescheduled so we could do it in person because, human face-to-face connection is everything, really. Like, I've traveled, all over the world, and you go on holiday, and if you don't, and you can see waterfalls. I love the beauty of the planet and the difference of, the cultures that you see and so on and so forth. But if you don't make human connection when you're out traveling, that's, it's a wasted trip. It's all, that's what makes us happy. So yeah, I totally get it. So when you were, I'm not sure how comfortable we are answering questions like this, but when you were in the cult, so when you were in Nowra, when you were in the compound, you were there for 10 years basically, you said?
10 years,
on the compound. So what did that actually look like day to day?
Well, the whole day was, firstly, we were forced to join. So he was creating a religious group and we were forced to join it and take vows of, like the nuns used to, of poverty, chastity and obedience. Yep. So even though we were married, we had to be still, not chaste, but we had to practice that within. So basically only have sex if you're going to have children. That was basically
Gotcha.
it. But so not only, so we had to dress a certain way, we had to wear these brown scapular things over our clothes, and we had to attend prayers at least twice a day, if not 3. So you'd be doing at least 2 hours, if not more, of prayer a day in the chapel. Then we had to eat lunch and dinner together. So we lived in separate houses, and like with the mothers, they were a little bit more free, so to speak, because we had to look after our own kids and, and obviously they've got to have their sleeps and whatever else, So, But by the same token, there was still a lot of pressure to say prayers, to be always offering sacrifices, to be going down to the chapel twice a day for prayers. And then you've got to go down to the chapel. They had an eating area underneath the chapel, so you had to eat. But then the mothers had to help the nuns prepare food. And I mean, there was 180 people living there at the time I was there. So you imagine preparing 2 meals a day. Like lunch was lunch, and then you have dinner, like a full cooked dinner.
Yeah, that's high level. That's high level preparation.
So it was a lot. It was a lot of work, and then we weren't encouraged. Like we had to ask permission to go out to go shopping, and we were encouraged to do that as quickly as possible because in case there's a punishment or a chastisement that happens if we're outside of those compound fences, well then we won't be saved. So
say that part again. If there was a punishment or a chastisement.
There was approximately every 6 months the world was going to end and we had to prepare for a chastisement, right?
Right.
So when we first moved up there in February 97, what he was then spitting out from what the Virgin Mary had apparently told him was that I think it was the Hale-Bopp comet was supposed to hit Earth on June 7, 1997. So I think the tail of it was supposed to swing and hit the Earth and knock it off its axis a little bit, and there would be extreme heat and then extreme cold.
Gotcha.
So that happened. So it didn't happen, but that was foretold.
Okay, and so they wanted to make sure that you were in the compound should the end of the world happen.
Yeah, or
rapidly, that afternoon.
Yeah,
Sorry, I shouldn't laugh.
No,
end of the world's a pretty serious thing.
I know, but this is. I mean, it's easy for me.
It's just wild.
I mean, it's easy for me to laugh about it now.
Yeah.
I mean, but see, the other thing is, and I've also spoken about it in the book, is that we were told that our children would be raptured. Now. Raptured as in, now this is what was told to us, is that the children would just literally just disappear. So it'd be just like, if you were to disappear, you'd be literally just disappear body and soul off that chair. Yeah.
Right.
Disappear.
Evaporation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when I asked where they would be taken, they said, to heaven to be protected while the earth is cleansed, and then the Virgin Mary would bring them back.
Right.
I only just found out a couple of weeks ago because my eldest daughter read the book and she said that because there was a school there and we've had to send the kids there, my eldest daughter told me that they were told in school not to play near the fences because they would be taken by people outside. Right. Now, I didn't know that. Otherwise, I would have put it in my book, but I didn't know that. I was just told that they would be taken literally body and soul, just evaporated.
So let me ask you this. So when you got to Nowra, what was your what age were you roundabouts?
I would have been 27.
27, okay. And how heavily indoctrinated were you before you got to Nowra?
Well, I was still, for me, I had been brought up to be, like very strict Catholic.
Yep.
The husband is the head of the house. You always obey them. Yep. You're quiet and submissive. You have the children. You do everything. All of that.
But you weren't indoctrinated in any way into a doomsday cult until that point in time, until you were 27, basically.
Well, my ex-husband had been receiving the supposed virgin messages that William Cam was spouting. He'd been receiving them for about 2 years, like getting them 2 years beforehand and reading them. So I knew about them.
Gotcha.
But hearing about the world ending and all this anxiety and everything, like it made me really anxious and I didn't want to know about it. Because I mean, they're talking about, even you've got to put holy water into food because even the food, the devil will poison the food and you'll die. And it was full on and it was scary.
Yeah. It would be.
So I never wanted to move there, but I felt like because I'd been brought up so strictly that the husband is the head of the house and a wife has to obey, that's why I did it. And I mean, we never shared a bank account, so I had no money. I had no self-esteem, no self-confidence. I knew I would not get any support from either side of the family, and I didn't want to be a single mum with 4 little kids.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to be.
Yeah. For sure, you had no power. You had no control of your life.
No, I didn't.
Effectively.
So that's why I went. And I erroneously thought that if I just sacrificed some time and let him have his way. Like, we can try it out. And then if it didn't work out, well then, okay, he'd just say, okay, it hasn't worked out, let's move on. But he never did.
Yeah, right. So because my question that I was, trying to wrap my head around with all those last points we talked about was how much of that did you actually believe? Like when you were told that basically your children would potentially evaporate into thin air, like when you're in a cult, when you're told this is the truth, this is how it is, this is the gospel effectively, how much ridiculousness can you believe? Because to somebody, an innocent bystander listening to that, someone outside looking in, you go, well, that's fucking crazy.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, how many other things have you seen evaporate? None, let alone children. But, So what was your state of mind with all that? Were you like, did you ever question it, or did you just 100% believe, or were you somewhere in the middle?
What you've got to understand is that now, firstly, a lot of the media throw around the term brainwashing. That's not a thing. Mm-hmm. Like, it's been scientifically proven that people make choices to move into groups like this. So you're not brainwashed. So you have, and once in, you do have choices, but they're not the choices you would make if you were free. Mm-hmm. It's between a rock and a hard place, and you wouldn't choose either. So
it's kind of like the choice you had.
Yeah.
You don't really have free will. You've got.
Yeah. So that is, so when you're in there, so you got to think, okay, these people or person like myself was in this box, and yes, we did have TV in there, but we only had the 3 channels and we didn't get much time. See, the whole idea of these groups oftentimes too is to have the members so busy that they don't have time to read except for the stuff that they're supposed to, and they're not, don't have much time to watch TV.
Things.
Yeah, question things. So therefore they're able to filter a whole lot of stuff. They filter everything that comes in and just tell it to you.
Yeah, propaganda.
Yeah, and you believe it because you just, like for me, I had just been brought up totally Catholic and never questioned anything because I arrogantly thought I had the truth. I was told by my mother that I'm more special than anyone else because I've got the Catholic faith. Mm-hmm. I'm going to heaven, you're not. Yeah. It's as simple as that. Yeah. So I had pity for somebody like you, which is terrible. It's just
Hey, I went to a Catholic school, thank you very much. Graduate college, year 12 education. I'm going straight to the pearly gates.
But see, this is what I mean. So for me, when I went there, I was so busy being scared and fearful that I didn't put any thought into anything else. And so I didn't want to believe a lot of it. But then when you're surrounded by so many other people that are all hell-bent into it, and they believe it and they're talking about it all the time, like you have to ask yourself, okay, they're all believing it and there's like 179 of them.
What's wrong with me?
Yeah, am I?
Yeah.
Am I, and then of course, like I kicked up a shindy about joining the group because I said to my ex-husband, I said, you go and join and I'll just wait while, they didn't, neither him nor the cult leader liked that because I was kicking up a shindy. Mm-hmm. So I was a troublemaker. But the thing is that I felt afraid and I felt like I had to do as I was told. So I felt forced. So I was fearful and I felt forced into it. And so I kind of believed, there were many times when I asked questions, but then it's like, where do I go for answers? I didn't know where to go for answers. Yeah. Like, you got to think I didn't have a computer. I couldn't just Google something. No. I didn't have a phone, so I couldn't just Google. Where would I go? I had literally no idea of anybody I could go to ask or even what to read. So what do I do? Yeah,
it's like you're trapped in an alternate reality.
Yeah.
It's like you're...
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's where I was stuck. I was literally stuck. I just didn't know. I wouldn't even know what... And see, because I'd been so indoctrinated as a kid to not read certain things... you only read books that are by saints or by popes or bishops. Or,
really? Even before the cult, just as a
safe things like Enid Blyton, Mary Grant Bruce, L.M. Montgomery, all those old ones. You don't I don't. They're not. There's nothing wrong with them. I'm just saying that it's good to have a mix, but we didn't have that mix.
Yeah.
So I didn't know where to go to for information.
Wow. That's so crazy. So what about, was there people, if there's 180 people living in the compound, were there people that did question it? And what happened to them if so?
Well, the thing is that we found out that there were a few people that had left. We didn't know their names and we didn't know why, but they had left and it was kind of whispered about, you know.
Yeah, right.
And
did they evaporate? Did they not?
Well, they didn't evaporate. They just left. But the thing is, we didn't know. And then we got into trouble for asking. Now, there was another lady that kicked up a shindy that about a few things, and people didn't speak very nicely about her. And I mean, you know, we didn't, like, I knew her, but we weren't close or anything. But I admired her because she spoke up, you know, when she wasn't happy about something, you know. People would say, oh, you know, she didn't agree with it. You know, she's kicked up a shindy. She wanted to do this and won't do that.
I've never heard that term before. So every time you say it, I'm like, kicked up a shindy.
Oh, really?
No, I've never heard it.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. It's a new one. We'll have to put it in the Urban Dictionary in case anyone else hasn't heard it.
There we go. So I, you know, and then I later, like, further down the track, not long before we left, I think it was the third time that Cam was trying to collaborate. Like, he was trying to have everybody, all their money that they earned, whether it was from Centrelink or from their jobs or whatever, have it all pooled in one account. Guess who? His. Oh, yeah? Yeah. Crazy, all pool it in his account, and then he would literally dole it out per person every week. So if he felt that you could live on $30 a week, that's all you're getting.
Right.
So I had kicked up a shindy both times before. And so I wasn't happy when this rolled around a third time. And then I don't know why I went to see this woman, but I did. Or we managed to, I don't know, pass or chat or something. And I found out that she wasn't happy about it either, because when I told Tony, my ex-husband, I said, well, I'm not happy about this. I don't agree with it. He's going, oh, you know, you're the only one that's causing trouble about this. And so I went back and I went, well, you know, this lady here is not happy about it either. Yeah, so you're not
she's
telling.
Kicking up a bloody shindy too, mate.
Yeah, that's right. You're not telling the truth.
Yeah.
So he wasn't happy about that, you know, because I'd caught him out in a lie, basically. So yeah.
Right. And then, so how did the whole thing work? When you said just before you said their jobs, so are you talking like you would get employment inside of the cult, or are you talking about employment outside of the cult in the town of Nowra and surrounds?
Well, both in a way, because there were some people in there that had their own businesses, you know, like carpentry or welding.
Inside of the compound?
Yeah. Well, no, they owned the businesses and they would go, they like got jobs outside.
It's like a regular tradie doing regular tradie,
gotcha. Yeah. Cam owned some convenience stores, you know, little convenience stores, milk bars, and he would have the men and some of the single women, whether they're older or younger, work in there and pay them minimum wage.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So how would that work as well? Like, how would that work kind of, you know, splitting your time between the compound and then the real world? How would the interactions between people that were cult members and people in the real world kind of look? Would it just be, it would not be an issue? Was there a divide between the town? I'm just referencing basically Wild Wild Country again, because it was like there was quite a divide. That it was us versus them. You know, well, was there any of that, or was it pretty seamless to just integrate in and out of a cult?
Well, because
the cult would just be thinking, these guys are idiots on the outside, right? You'd be thinking you've got the inside run.
Of course we have.
Yeah, you've got the truth. Yeah, everybody else is just stupid.
Yeah, you're dying, mate.
Right.
Yeah, you're not going to heaven. You're not getting saved.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we still had that arrogance. Well, I mean, I had the arrogance. I'm talking personally. I had the arrogance because I had the truth of the Catholic faith.
Yeah, you're chuffed.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I'm there, honey. You know, you got no chance.
Yeah. I'm VIP.
That's it. Yeah.
I'm VIP at the line of the gates.
And of course, the more sacrifice. So not only was I in, but if I did more sacrifices, I would get a higher place in heaven.
Oh, right. Is that how it works?
So if you scraped through at the last minute, you'd be way down here. I'd be up here.
You'd be cleaning dunnies in heaven.
That's right.
Yeah. You're still in heaven, but, you know, you're cleaning dunnies.
That's it.
Yeah.
So so the thing was that, well, with one of the convenience stores he bought, it was across the road from a primary school, and before he bought it, it had quite a big clientele. teachers, school kids, parents, whatever. But then once he bought it, because see, the thing was that the town knew, and he'd caused problems for quite a while, like especially with the Catholic Church. So like Bishop Peter Ingham from Wollongong and his two predecessors had already, they had said things against him before and said, no, what he's doing is wrong. He's not part of the Catholic Church, blah, 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 stay away from him, all the rest of it. So there was a lot there. So the townspeople knew, and they would know from the way we were dressed, because we always dressed, with skirts,
Yeah, dead giveaway.
Yeah, dead giveaway.
Brown, did you say? Brown garb?
Well, we had brown garb over over our normal clothes. But with the women, we had to be covered down to the elbow, up to the neck, and at least a mid-calf. Yeah. So there was no... Yeah.
It's not your regular street wearing now.
No,
at the time.
No.
I'm probably rocking Slazenger and Adidas.
Yeah, there you go.
More to that,
So that's where we were known, so to speak. And I mean, people would be like, the outside people would be polite, but I suppose we were tolerated in a way. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can't blame them. I don't blame them, and I don't judge them, because they didn't know, and they felt awkward, and why? Because looking from the outside in, there'd already been stories aired about him, and it was a bit sus and all the rest. Like he was weird. Come on, let's face it.
Yeah.
So I mean, them
don't like weird.
Yeah, that's it, and they didn't understand.
People are scared of different.
Yeah. And I mean, we were different. We were very different. And I mean, it doesn't help that he was writing stuff to papers and saying, the Virgin Mary said, she sent this warning that, you've got to be prepared, blah, blah, blah. I mean, come on.
Look, it's PR-worthy news. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah, but then the date would come and go and nothing had happened. So they're going nutcase.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it was, I felt embarrassed when I would go out because
oh really?
Yeah, I would because I would.
That's interesting.
Because I mean, if people were being friendly to me, like I remember I used to go and buy fruit and veg from a fruit and veg guy, and I mean, he was just pleasant, like he's friendly. Hi, how are you? How's your week been? Just normal stuff, and I would answer it, and I mean. I was, I look back now and I would have just, been just really plain, no makeup, hair down to here and just really dowdily dressed.
Yeah.
And, but I mean, he knew he would have been able to see I was different. I mean, I had a horde of kids with me, so.
So why were you embarrassed? Did you get like.
Well, I felt like I wasn't, because for me, I wanted to fit in.
Yeah.
When I say fit in, it didn't mean that I necessarily had to dress the same as everybody else, but I wanted to be able to interact with people on a normal level, like I'm interacting with you now.
Yeah.
I wanted to be able to do that, and I felt inadequate.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was very different, and I didn't know what to talk about. Like we
you would have had nothing to talk about.
Well, that's it.
It's like they say if a lion could speak English, you would still not be able to converse because your frames of reference are so different.
Yeah. And so
I don't know why they use a lion's reference, but I've heard that too. I've heard that analogy before.
Well, see, that's the thing. I had nothing to reference with. I was really strictly Catholic.
Yeah.
And I mean, what would I talk about? I didn't know. I mean, I don't know a lot about politics now as it is, but I mean, if somebody had have said something to me, have you heard of what the US president is doing? I'd be like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. What's the US?
Yeah. It was so foreign to me.
Yeah.
Like I remember when there was the terrorist attack, the 9/11, and we were in. It was raining. It was cold, and I'd actually gone into town with Tony, and because we had a couple of kids, like most of them were at school, but we had a few young ones. So he just ran around in the car and did a couple of things, and then I just did a couple of things. And I was coming out of the Salvation Army store, and I saw it out of my peripheral, there was a guy there, and I didn't take much notice. And then he approached me, and I realised that it was one of the cult members because we had ones that would live, there wasn't enough room on the inside, so they live outside.
Gotcha.
And he said, there's been an attack in the US. Is it the beginning of the Third World War? And I'm like, what? Because I didn't know what he was talking about. Like, I mean, I'd heard Third World War before.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, attack? What are you talking about? I did not know what this was. Mm-hmm. And then Tony came to pick me up then, and he had the radio on and he'd heard about the terrorist attack. And I didn't know what a terrorist attack was. And then we went home. Tony turned on the TV. I just remember seeing these horrific images.
Yeah.
And I look, they were so horrific for me. I can still remember those couple of images that I saw, and I couldn't watch anymore because for me, A, I didn't understand what a real terrorist attack was, but B, for me, it was like, how could other humans do this to humans? Because we all feel. It doesn't matter what race, gender, culture we are or belief, we're humans and we have feelings, and how could someone else do that to people? I couldn't, you know.
That's how everyone should really think, isn't it, at the end of the day? But yeah, it's a crazy. I was surprised. Yeah, I was surprised to hear you say that you were embarrassed. I would have thought that you would have been. I feel like cults are so. I feel like they're normally so blindly confident in they're correct, and everyone else is an ignoramus. Everyone else is missing out, which you kind of had, but you still felt like an outsider. So when did it get to the point where, I know you briefly touched on it before, like a bit of the mental process you went through in trying to get yourself out of the cult, but when did it get to the pointy end? When did it get to like, all right, cool, I'm beginning to see through this. This is not where I want to live the rest of my life. How do I get, like, what was the process like in your head?
Okay, well, the first one was we moved up there in February 1997. In January 2000, because I had seen the little Pebble like get a bit cozy with women, like even with the 16-year-old girls, he'd put his arm around them or whatever, and I thought, that's a bit, ugh.
Yeah.
You know, like
most cult leaders get accused of that. I feel like there's, most creepy old cult leader men, they're always doing sneaky business with the
and I just and then there was these 16, 17-year-old virgins getting pregnant, and they were mystical babies, and I'm thinking, well.
Immaculate conception.
Yeah. And see, one of them, she had a cesarean, so she said it was an immaculate birth, so she was still a virgin. I'm like, yeah, right, whatever.
Whoa.
So, but January 2000 came, and I cannot remember for the life of me. I wish I could, but there was a whiteboard about as big as that window there in the back of the chapel. And the way he wrote, there was one of the queens had the single girls, she had a baby. And it was the way he worded it, it sounded like his wife. And it just, a light bulb went on because, I'd seen all these things and it was like jigsaw puzzle pieces, when you're putting
you're trying to make sense of it all.
All of a sudden, I saw it. He's having sex with these girls and they're getting pregnant. And I was horrified. I was disgusted. I was angry. I literally wanted to punch his lights out.
Yeah.
To be honest, I wanted to punch his lights out. I thought, you dirty old bastard.
Yeah.
And
the Little Pebble, even that nickname, it's just a creepy nickname.
Creepy.
You'll never trust. I'd never have a mate named the Little Pebble.
That's it.
I can tell you that right now.
Yeah, that's it. So then I went home to Tony and I said, he's having sex with these girls and getting them pregnant, and I don't agree with it. And I think it's disgusting, wrong, everything. I want to move. And he said, no, we're not moving because, he has permission from the Virgin Mary to do this. And I'm like, yeah, right.
So Tony knew about it?
I never actually asked him. I presumed he figured it out. I don't know. I didn't ask. But anyway, I was unhappy about it. But again, I had no choices, no money, nothing, couldn't move. So I wasn't happy about that at all. And then I just okay, I just kind of put my head down and just sort of kept living. But then it came to May 2004 when my husband decided that he would take steps to become a married priest behind my back. And I was just like, we'd always been told that the wives had to be asked and they had to give written permission and it wasn't to be forced. And anyway, he said, Tony lets me know as he's walking out the door one day, oh, by the way, I'm going to become a married priest. And I'm like, I was shocked. I was horrified. I was disgusted. I felt like I'd been cheated on. I just felt trampled on. And I was so angry. I can't even remember being that angry since.
So for the people, which is probably most people that don't understand the difference between Tony and your regular life, and if he was to be a married priest.
Well, the Catholic Church doesn't have married priests, but the thing was that he just wanted to be a married priest because he'd always wanted to be a priest and he hadn't been before, he wasn't allowed to before, and now he was going to try and be part of it. Anyway, I just knew I was 6 months pregnant with my youngest child, and I knew that day my marriage was over. However, I still felt guilty. I still felt like I had to give it one more shot, like to know absolutely for sure that the marriage was over.
Yeah.
But it was a small little light in my soul that just made me start looking out for myself. And he was a serial online gambler. Like he gambled away about $250,000 over 3 years.
Wow.
But he couldn't give me money for children's shoes.
Yeah.
And I just thought, how fair is this? Is not fair. We're not being looked after. I had 8 kids there and I wasn't being looked after and they weren't being looked after. And I thought, you're doing your thing and you don't care about us. Mm-hmm. And I thought, no, I'm going to start. So it was from then I started going to church in the outside parish. Mm-hmm. And he didn't like it and the cult leader didn't like it. Mm-hmm. They were as mad as hornets that I did it, but I went and did it. And that was my first step out. Mm-hmm. And I started making friends out there. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I was still dressing weird, I was still wearing a scarf over my head, all of that. Yep. But I just thought my kids and I deserve better.
Wow.
And that's how I started. So literally step by step. And when I was writing the end part of my book earlier this year, I'm thinking, good God, I had such balls.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. It must be the hardest thing in the world when you spent your whole life you've been controlled effectively until that point. Yeah, controlled,
manipulated, indoctrinated, guilted, guilt, judgment,
but not
sin.
Your whole life like it's 5 or 6 or 7 years either, like decades. So to have the willpower to be able to do that is pretty amazing. So well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
So all right. So when you were actually, so you made your way out. It wasn't like there wasn't a huge controversy with you leaving. Like you broke up with your husband, I assume, and then was there more to it? Or
so starting to go to church in the outside parish was like the first step.
Yeah.
And see, they considered that like I was trouble because, people liked me, because, I was friendly. I was still vivacious, I still got into trouble for talking too much. And
make food for everyone.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I still got into trouble for talking too much and being too loud and asking inappropriate questions like, oh, the 17-year-old is pregnant. Who's the father?
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure about this immaculate conception thing.
Yeah, that's right.
It seems to be happening a little bit too much in my life.
That's right. So it was about... but still, people liked me. They thought I was friendly and happy and thoughtful and everything else. So, for me to start breaking away, this is danger because she could just take a few people with her.
Yeah, that's right. So you might have been the tipping point for them. Or the lead domino anyway.
It turned out that I was, because I then started writing letters and asking questions of them, the cult leaders, the cult leader and the priest that was there. Like, how can they tell us from the pulpit to live by the rules of the Catholic Church and obey the Catholic Church in everything, yet they were creating married men as priests and bishops, which isn't allowed by the Catholic Church. So how...
We're not allowed to break your rules, but you can make your own and break your own rules at any time you like.
And I mean, look, I knew the answers to these things because Tony had collected all these books on, the Catholic Catechism and the canon law and everything else. So I knew where to go for the answers, and I found them. So there was only I only quoted 3 questions and answers. So it wasn't like a long thesis. And see, I sent the first letter, and then he sent back all this waffle that, the Virgin Mary told him this and that. So it wasn't based on anything Catholic, just his waffle. The second one was only slightly better, but not really. And then when I asked the third time, they got really miffed. So at this point, Cam had been arrested for pedophilia and he was going through a court case. So what he did, because the property that we were living and the house that we were living in, he had a mortgage on. So he was paying that mortgage. Now, all of this was only revealed later, obviously, but at the time that I started writing those letters and being in trouble, he stopped paying the mortgage.
Right.
So, which then led to us being evicted 2 years later.
Right. So that was your exit.
So that was my exit.
Right.
But I didn't know that, obviously. All of that came out later, much later. So I had no idea. So me doing that those small steps started something that I didn't even see that was happening.
It really did start the chain reaction.
I did. And then see people, because I stuck my heels in and I wouldn't, I just wouldn't budge. I even had some of the cult members coming to me and just saying, look, you really need to stop now. You've been given an answer. You need to stop. You need to stop asking questions.
Were you scared at any time?
No. I just smiled sweetly and kept on my way and just thinking, well, you're telling me that we need to abide by the rules of the Catholic Church. Well, it says in canon law.
Yeah.
It says in canon law you can't do that. So, and I mean, in the end, it turned out to be right,
Wow. So here's a question for you. It's probably the biggest one of all.
Right.
So what are your thoughts on religion now?
That's a huge question because, again, it's open to interpretation for individuals. I think that religion does have its place in that, when we spoke before about, the third place and connection. See, religion, church, or your temple or synagogue or whatever it is, used to be, a very important form of connection.
Yeah, it was the original third place.
Yeah. But see, because the world has changed so much, technically and like in every which way the world's changed so much, religion doesn't have such a big hold now because, I mean, people are asking more questions. They don't believe as simply and easily as they used to.
Yeah.
So I think that everybody has some sort of yearning for some kind of belief in something, whatever that is. You might be an atheist, like I use the term God, but for me it's not that God harsh figure that I was brought up with. To me, I am spiritual, not religious.
Yeah.
So I still think that religion has a place, but as long as it is changing and evolving with its members and it's not indoctrinating or controlling,
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, isn't it? It was, the basic tenets behind why religion was created, in my humble opinion, is probably to control growing numbers of people. But everything that was, religion was all very positive. It was all very good, and the 10 Commandments and it was basically how to live a good, respectful life for those, for yourself and those around you. That really was. Now I feel like it's just more. It leads to more us versus them than anything else, which I think is the biggest problem with our society to this day. Really, that we never look at ourselves as one human race, and we're all the same. We've got race and sexuality and gender and religion.
Oh my God!
And it's just the saddest thing. We can't just be happy for each other. And I think religion has a big negative part to play in that.
Well, there's a lot of divides.
Yeah.
And see, I don't think that there should be divides. And I mean, for me, the way I was brought up in the strict Catholicism, and again, that group is still flourishing today, and it's still creating homophobics and bigots and racists. And to me, it's very, very wrong because, like I was brought up, homophobic. But I was taught that gays were so bad, they were sinful, they chose that. I accepted it because I didn't know any better. However, I've come way out the other side and I've got gay friends. I'm so proud to say I've got gay friends.
Yeah.
And I want to, I love sitting down and having a conversation with them. I want people of all race and colour and gender and creed to be my friends.
Yeah.
Because I'm eager to learn.
You just want a good person to be your friend regardless of anything.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, I'm with you. So would you call yourself agnostic, or you call yourself religious, or you call yourself atheist, or you don't like to put a term on it?
For me, I can't put a term on it because I haven't got it all figured out. And I don't think I will.
Planning to figure it out, eh?
Look,
I'm just waiting. I've got about 3 equations to go, and I'm going to have figured out the meaning of life.
I think that there is a higher power that we are all a part of with our higher self.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this might make sense to some, and it might be complete gibbery jook to somebody else.
Gibbery jook.
Or whatever it is.
Couldn't even say gibberish and gobbledygook.
Yeah, there you go. I can't, no.
Gibbery jook.
But, it makes sense in my brain.
Yes.
And I just think that, to me, it's all simple. I think that we all should just treat each other the way we want to be treated. And, with empathy, compassion and understanding. I think that we need to, look out for Mother Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that as a people, we're all connected on some level. Like we are. Energetically, we're connected on some level. I really do. Whether you explain that as God or something, I have no idea. But it's just that, look, that's how it is for me right now. Mm-hmm. This could change in 2 months, 6 months, couple of years. Yeah. I don't know. I'm just on this. For me, I'm very open to hearing about all sorts of things, reading stuff, learning stuff, talking to people. And I find that especially when I talk to people, I need to, I hear it and it just sits there and sort of mellows like rum or whatever, and just sits there and sometimes it doesn't sort of enlighten me for a while. I don't know. I'm a stewer, I think about stuff.
Mm. No, well, that's fair. That's fair. I think, you don't need to have an answer to that question. I'd probably say I'm agnostic. I think we just don't know. There's too much. I don't think we'll ever know.
Oh, that's it. And I can't.
And that's cool.
See, for me, I don't, even though I was brought up dogmatically to believe that there's a heaven and a hell. Mm. Is there really?
Mm. Yeah, well, I don't think we don't. Look, the one thing that I'm very, very, not anti-religion, but I'm just not religious. I'm not just not religious at all. But I don't understand how the known universe was contained in the size of a pinhead, and in less than 0.1 second, it all turned into the universe. That's pretty spooky stuff.
Well, God created it. Don't you know this?
Yeah, well, there you go. Well, the thing is, something probably did. If science has got us to there, I'll back science in. I'm like, yeah, good job, science. What put the pinhead there? That's the question that leaves a little door ajar for, not God. I don't like to call it God, but a process that we don't understand, that I don't think our little human brains will ever probably understand. But
well, that's it. I don't think we can. There is so much out there. Just at TEDx Melbourne, I heard Dr. Lisa Harvey Smith talk on. She's an astrologist, well, more than that. But and then I read her interview in the Womankind magazine, and just her interview, and that's only a tiny bit of what she knows and what she's learned and what she's fascinated by, and it just amazes me.
Yeah.
And that stretches my brain.
You especially, someone who was starved of information, you'd be like, Woman's Day.
Yeah.
This is incredible.
It's just and see, that's where I'm a sponge. I'm just reading stuff and I'm fascinated.
Yeah, you got that childlike fascination.
I love it.
Yeah,
but
that's great. I think it's an awesome feeling to have. I remember, I don't know how or why, but I've told this story a couple of times on the podcast. I got back to that childlike fascination after watching Interstellar about 5 years ago. Right. Have you seen Interstellar?
I haven't. My husband has, and I think he described it to me, and I sort of went,
Yeah, it's very sciencey, very sci-fi. Yeah, it's kind of like a nerdy bloke flick, kind of like action sci-fi.
Right.
I don't know, but it's a great film, and it's all about time dilation, and that there's a big portion of the movie that talks about explains kind of time dilation, because they go to another planet and time slows down, they come back in everybody's age, and I was like, what the fuck's going on?
Yeah.
And then my housemate Fred came back and basically he bro scienced time dilation to me and the theory of relativity in about the space of an hour on a Friday evening at about 11 p.m.
God.
And then I spent the rest of the night I was just fascinated. And then since then, it kind of has rekindled my quest for learning. It's really a great feeling to have when you're just fascinated by the world, I feel like. You'd be right in the thick of that. Considering you just missed out on 35 years of it.
Well, see, that's what I do. I feel like I've got to just keep on learning. And see, when the lecturer for the uni the uni subject that I studied, when he contacted me and he's been talking to me and stuff, it's just like, and then we did the course. It's just like, wow, like there's so much there. There is so much. And I'm just like, wow, I have to know about this and that and this and that. And like, what about this and why that? And, you know, and I love it.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. And I love talking to people and hearing about stuff, hearing about their, you know, like their past life or, you know, what they're interested in, their stories. I love that. Their beliefs. I know I got into trouble a few times when I first came out of you know, like when I first left the cult and I was venturing into the world and, you know, like I learned that you're not supposed to ask questions about politics, religion and money because, you know, people get a bit uptight.
Yeah.
But for me, see, like I was just, you know, like, I mean, I was learning and I mean, I still am. Like, I mean, if I asked you, you know, like, why did you vote Labor? It's not for you to just go, oh my God, well, you know, my whole family have voted for Labor since whenever and blah, 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 blah. I just want to know, well, do you vote Labor because your family always has or
I don't believe that statement at all. I don't believe believe you never talk about politics, religion or money. Because never talk about politics, religion or money if you don't know how to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Like realistically, if you're not an idiot, anything should be on the table.
Well, that's what I reckon.
Yeah.
And so
like
I
just learn how to converse in a respectful way, like a normal adult, and you'll probably be able to talk about, you know, most taboo topics.
Well, see, that was the thing. I found it really hard because people thought that I was attacking them. But I mean, for me, it was just about, okay, so you vote Liberal or Labor. Why? Is it because your family always has? Have you questioned why you still do? Like, just because you do doesn't make the party, like the party's obviously changed.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of things that we need to talk about, I think, that should be open.
Yeah. Open channels of dialogue are just going to make the world a better, you know, more well-rounded place. If you keep things taboo, if you keep things, you know, I have a really big problem. This is a bit of a tangent, but like, things such as like blackface. Blackface is terrible and it's something that is a very, very taboo topic, but it needs to be talked about. Things like that need to be talked about more openly and so forth because we need to realise that there's mistakes that have happened in the past and there's things that you know we're not comfortable with and so forth, but they're okay. You know, and we have to move on and we have to, you know, learn to live a happy, respectful life to everyone around us. I have a touchy bit on that blackface thing because this kid that didn't know anything about blackface that got smashed by the media years ago that I just thought was just a horrible and just a silly thing to have happened to a young kid. But I'm going on a bit of a tangent. Claire, we have to wrap this up because I want to get to the dessert.
The brownie.
The brownies over there.
They're tempting you.
Yeah. So I've got a couple of questions that I normally ask. I'm gonna ask two questions of mine and one question that my co-host Tommy used to ask when he was on the show. Tommy's moved to Bali since.
Right.
That's a good question. I think it'll be good.
Go.
So my first question is your dream travel destination anywhere on the planet. What's the favourite place you've been and why?
Favourite place I've been? Well, I love England. I haven't travelled much. I've been to England twice and Bali once, but I love England because of the history. Like I am fascinated by, like my husband even, you know, like when we went into the 3 Tons pub in York and I'm just like, oh my God, I'm feeling the stones and just going, oh my God, who sat here? And Mark's going,
the Vikings.
Don't do that. It looks weird.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but you don't know who it was. What did they talk about?
Yeah.
You know?
Ragnar Lothbrok.
Yeah, that's right. So I want to travel all over because I love living history as in, you know, I'm there and I can imagine it and I'm hearing it and feeling it. Yeah. I love it.
You'd love South America. That's always my favourite part of the world.
Yeah.
So many ancient ruins and and so forth that you can really you can feel how it would have all gone on around you. Really cool. Okay, my next question is any book that you like to recommend. Obviously, we can plug your book later, and we've plugged it already. Any books that you like to recommend to people that can be anything, can be an autobiography, comic book, whatever.
Look, one book that I really read and got a lot out of was Pamela Stevenson's autobiography, The Unvarnished Truth or The Unvarnished Untruth. I can't remember. Varnished Untruth maybe, but look it up, Pamela Stevenson.
Yep.
I got a lot out of that, actually. I do like reading autobiographies because I like to, pick tidbits from other people's lives. But hers really resonated because I felt like, she was a bit of a, she'd been portrayed as a bit of a two-bit actress and a bit seedy, blah, blah, blah. But then when I read her book, I'm thinking, oh, hell, I feel like there was a lot of similarities there for myself. She was naive in a lot of ways and different things that happened to her. And I thought, oh, okay, then that's okay. I'm not as backward as I first thought. So that's okay.
I'm only slightly backward.
Yeah, just slightly backward instead of being fully backward. So,
Yeah.
So that was good.
Cool. And lastly, if you had 3 people that you could invite to dinner, dead or alive, who would they be and why?
Oprah,
Yeah.
Michelle Obama, Maya Angelou, and it has to be a 4th one.
All right.
Meghan Markle.
Meghan Markle. Is Meghan Markle...
She's the Duchess of Sussex.
Yeah, right.
Now, the reason why, and I know people probably say, oh, my God, but for me, each of those women are strong. They have their truth. They are comfortable with themselves. I love how they include others. I love how they are helping women really rise to the fore, but without being man bashers. There's no need because I call myself a feminist, and I've got 5 daughters, so girls rule. However, we're not the kind of feminists that are man bashing, because that's not fair.
Yeah.
It's not fair and it's not right.
Yeah.
So we are. So I just think that those 4 women, they're strong, they are powerful, but they're powerful in a beautifully feminine way, and they are able to change the world and really help people to reflect on themselves, and they bring that kind of beauty and compassion and empathy to the world, and I really like those 4.
Wow. That's a great answer. I feel like there's a whole other conversation that we could have right here and now about the or more of what you talked about, what you're doing right now in this day and age, and empowering women and so forth. But unfortunately, it's going to have to be another time. So,
well, let's do it.
Yeah, bloody oath.
We'll do it.
Yeah, I'll fly up again. Or you could come down to Melbourne this time and I'll cook you some toast or something.
Okay. This can be part 1 and we can do part 2.
Yeah, absolutely.
How's that?
For sure. I'll be keen. I'll definitely be keen.
Cool.
All right, Claire. So before we go, where can people find you? Anything you want to plug?
Right. You can find me at www.claireashman.com. That is my website. So you can actually, there's a page on there where you can click and it'll take you to Amazon for my ebook, and you can order the paperback. And I'm also on Instagram as Claire Ashman Speaker. And I have a public Facebook page. So people can ask me questions. And if you read the book and you have any questions whatsoever, I'm actually answering them with little videos, because
Cool.
I like the interaction and I like people to ask questions. And just as one question to be answered, this is me, First Communion, Easter Sunday, 1976. So there you go.
For those listening on iTunes, you'll never know what she was talking about. All right, Claire. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. That was great.
Awesome.
And that's a wrap.
Alrighty, gang. Thanks for listening. If you would like to support the show, you can do so by heading to our Patreon. That is Patreon, patreon.com/AdventureFit. At that page, you can donate as little as $1 per month, up to $25 per month. So that's obviously a financial way to support the show, but obviously we don't expect everybody to do that. So other ways that you can support the show are just sharing the show if you really liked it, telling a friend, commenting on our social media, all that kind of stuff. Just basically sharing the love. That's always really helpful for us. And if you want anything from the show notes, they can be found at adventurefittravel.com/radio. You can also get 10% off at trueprotein.com.au using the code ADVF, and 10% off at Adventure Fit Travel using the code radio. Cool, guys. See you next week.
Discovery Roger, go for deploy.